probably was college, nothing,
Did you ever get
They
these
have
like
remote
this?
learning.
I'm not going to be surprised to hear
Yes.
that they do.
They
It
will.
makes
well, I
me
can
really
tell you,
sad.
Back home.
I'm having problems with it right now.
Yeah.
Kingsbury
It's
was
like if it gets like moved or something or like not lined up, but
Yeah.
Ohio
and then sometimes it's like just enough off that if you were to do it again, it messes up the whole thing. Like you have
I've
a
spent
situation
most
on.
of today making
You could
contingency
always
plans
think,
for
maybe we
employees
could
who
get
are
you
mostly in
a 3-hole
schedule.
punch for your home.
Yeah.
And do we have a secretary? Yeah. Okay.
I'm on it.
And a sergeant of arms. Do we have a sergeant of arms for this evening?
It looks like AJ's
Thanks, AJ.
getting set up.
Okay. Okay, so we need to adopt the agenda. Need a motion to adopt the agenda.
Adopt the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move into announcements. Board member announcements. Any announcements? I'll just say thank you to everyone who showed up for the GM. I think we had 10 adults and I think 1 kiddo. So thanks again for everyone who was there. A lot of good discussion. Really appreciate Joe being there. Helped clarify a lot of questions that some community members had. A big conversation around volunteerism and how we can kind of create a pipeline to allow more volunteerism in our community. So whether that looks like a volunteer coordinator or maybe a board member acting in that kind of capacity. So more to come, something for all of us to noodle on, especially as we approach the summer when some people in our community are really looking forward to help out, which I thought was really cool to hear. So other than that, I really appreciate as well on that same front, Ken's Cozy Cafe for sponsoring the refreshment. Okay, go ahead and take it away.
Good evening, Board of Directors, Mr. President, members of the audience. Okay. How about now? Good evening again, Board of Directors, Mr. President, and members of the audience. And I'm here tonight to go over where Sudden Valley has, and what Sudden Valley has been doing in planning for the current pandemic. And yes, this is a pandemic now, as declared by the World Health Organization yesterday. I'm not manager and I will do that. So starting off with this, here's just some numbers that were published on the SITREP that the county has puts out, DEM, on behalf of the incident commander, which is Whatcom County Public Health. These were valid as of we have 1 confirmed case in the county as reported by the incident commander. Is believed to be positive for the virus. That's not been captured yet, and public health will make that official announcement at some point. My point being that the numbers change regularly and rapidly, especially in King County, Pierce, and Snohomish County, as the governor indicated today during his news media conference carried statewide. We've got 19 residents of Whatcom County pending test results, and then last report. But again, these numbers change rapidly. As testing increases, availability of testing increases, the numbers change. And that's how the public health sector is addressing this. So in addition to this, we all are aware that the county executive on March 10th actually issued a declaration of emergency for this public health crisis. Out of his authority, it was also in concert with Whatcom County Public Health. So he did issue that, and with that were some pretty straightforward guidelines that he communicated in that declaration. One, he talked about people at risk or the high-risk categories defined as over 60 years of age, consider or postpone non-essential large public gatherings. This meeting is government. That's why municipalities is to avoid those people together later by canceling or by other means. And we'll talk about that, teleconferencing and those kind of options. They defined a large gathering loosely as 10 people. Other came rate that may point to start going out, we're going to have to start making adjustments to operations. We're already those ends so as well. Became a hot button issue when it was confined to Wuhan province, China. We've been keeping our eyes on it per se through media and with our agency partners such as Department of Emergency Management. We have infection or spread of the virus, both of our staff, consideration for community members, as well as key committees, how that would occur. So those plans have been going on since early in March. Worked them through what's called through the non-pharmaceutical interventions, which CDC has published. There are 13 of them. The first 5 everybody is fairly familiar with, which is washing your hands, don't touch face, mouth, those kind of things. It's called respiratory discipline, and not sneezing droplets on that. And also, if you're sick, stay home. So we've been working through those since early on. And like I said, we have municipalities, agency partners, public service entities, EMS, et cetera, on what the current path was at that point. So as this pandemic continues, and it's projected to do so, we understand and are fully aware that operations may change for the association because it'll probably be dictated by what is occurring with not only staff, workforce, and also promulgated by the incident commander, which is John Walpers currently for public health. The state level, they've gone ahead and stood up what's called unified command. It is no longer just the director of emergency management, but he's also, the governor has indicated and stood up Unified Command, which is a very high-level activation at Camp Murray. It involves a lot of government officials and all kinds of planners and those kind of things. So it's a pretty serious event. We're also, on our level, be less than remiss if we didn't look at the business implications potentially to the association for closed events, revenue, and all of those kind of things. I forwarded to loans, as well as what's called a damage worksheet that we have. We haven't had to do anything yet with it, because be to the bottom line, as well as the health, safety, and welfare of our community, the impact on people. Medical end of stuff is changing rapidly, as you know, with testing, also with can and should go to the state of Washington to provide there are questions. Take those, and if we do not, I will forward to the liaison officer for public health.
So what places and that sort of thing, like even the front of the window where everybody comes to admin, any of the restrooms, have we given more instruction to our janitorial staff?
We have, I have had Bruce step up the cleaning services throughout all of the public buildings that we have in operations right now.
And that was early on as well.
That was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that started about the beginning of the month. We had that discussion early on. The janitor was given specific instructions on frequency as well as method.
Additionally, in our front office, all of our staff have been abreast of this whole development, and they've been asked us to remain 6 feet away from anyone at the window. We do request that members don't touch the window, and everyone's really cognizant of it, and just not to lean in, because we're used to just get on the counter and hand in, how can I help you? And we're just, keeping a distance, and also the consistent use of sanitary devices to keep all of the surfaces clean. And I know that, and Maddie can speak to this, I know in the rec center they have hospital-grade disinfectants that they use.
Next question. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I just curious about meetings going forward, committee meetings, board meetings. Do we have any guidance on that, or are we just kind of playing it one day at a time?
I can address that one too. It is a matter of time before we're told that we can't congregate. So we have made, we've been actually planning this a long time. John, who in the back there, our IT specialist, has been researching means of remote meetings. I don't, John, if you want to kind of address what the capabilities are, do you want to step up? But it has video capabilities and also the ability.
Yeah. It's a conference software call in, and then we also have a resource for the community to be able to continue to interact with us as well.
It would be a provided link to board members as well as to the community to call in.
100 in the room, cancellation of events, yes, we've planned for that, how we would contact stakeholders as well as tenants when that needs to come forward. I just, during this meeting, received an update from Department of Emergency Management on guidelines for cancellations of events. It's a very serious matter. and that's not to be taken lightly, be it not only for the slowing down the potential for the virus, but as well as continuity issues and meetings, et cetera. So we have been working on that. That's actually what this is. And so that decision has to be made. We'll get a hold of our cognizant stakeholders as well as key community members as well. When this process started, I met with all of our agency partners, including key community members like Summer for the services will get drained as well. I met with Jason Manning with Christ the King Church, talked to them about, they're our largest group that meets, the potential for that. They've been in active
How do, oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Currently, my name is Norm Smith. I'm the Public Safety Manager for Sudden Valley Community Association, my second tour of duty here.
Telecommunications. I mean, I think we should take a position here, be proactive. And or essentially, as this meeting tonight, I'd be in favor of telecommunicating from, beginning the very next board meeting.
Got finance coming up, you have RPC
Some
coming, you have issues coming up, be across the whole gamut. That would be my recommendation to do as a nothing different than what the county has done with some their meetings. I would, I know it's going to come down.
Agreed. Believe
Well, that depends on how we're able to do like this for
For Zoom, so
I understand finance probably has some things, but like communications entity, probably, I could have a wonderful conversation with everybody, there's only 5 of us. But it's like, if it's a non-essential thing, that you might be able to cancel some of those meetings too.
It's a pretty simple thing. I know when the state put out their, well, it wasn't a WebEx, it was Zoom, but still it was a teleconference. Everybody, there were 800 participants. Yeah, and there was just a single that was sent out to everybody on the list. And so any committee, we obviously have email addresses for every committee member. So before every meeting, you would just get an email with the contact information. And if you don't have access to a computer, you can just call in and participate by phone.
So we've already paid for this, or does it?
We did. We $16. We needed $46 a month, and I anticipate this hopefully not going on beyond a couple of months.
And it's unlimited, like?
Yes.
Okay.
The 46, I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but $46 is going to cover everything, correct?
was $15 plus 40, so it's $55 plus tax total per month that we're running that. And that covers up to 100 participants. If we need to expand from there, we can pretty easily, but we kind of started out at sort of a meeting level sort of a position.
Well, if this is already implemented, I don't see why there'd be any reason not to meet in our pajamas for once.
Just don't do study.
Yeah.
Ready to go.
Okay. That's all I wanted.
Just need a motion for whatever period of time the board feels.
Okay. I make a motion that the board of directors and all committees should teleconference all meetings until advised differently.
Otherwise, yeah.
Yeah.
The band's lifted.
I mean, we could, you could put April 1st on it, that's no action, but it's only. that's a
No,
month.
it's not.
I'd go May 1st, run to May 1st. Yeah, so we could run to May 1st and we could check it at that point.
Or under advisement of Health Department.
Yeah,
I mean, this is really under the advisement of the Health Department.
We can always, yeah, we can always
Yeah.
change it at that point. We could run it to April 30th.
Okay, I'll say until April 30th or otherwise advised. Does that count?
Yeah. Second.
Can we restate the motion?
Oh, gosh.
Is that,
So as far they track this with a bell curve, and as that top of that bell curve tends to reach what the statistical model says is midway, then they put that out as their projected date. So we'll keep an eye on that, and Joe can forward that to the president, and let him know what public health, and Steffi's right, it comes from CDC and mostly. And once that date is hit, then you can project out.
thank you. So I have the motion is that the board of directors and all committee meetings teleconference until April 30th, unless otherwise advised. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Further discussion?
Further discussion?
I do have a question. So what would be the process of getting the codes for certain meetings, making sure nothing overlaps?
It would be the same as we have meetings right now. So the board of directors, you would get your code for the board meeting as well as the general public would get it. Your committees as well. So Josh, we have all the emails for your committee. We have all the emails for AJ's. We have all the emails for finance. So you would just send it out. There's a code, and then it would you just dial in or click it into the computer.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So we would mail it out to you.
I have a question. Ours is not quite as easy, and we have one opening, but
You have to notify anybody, builders, of anything coming in for approval would have to be in time, and say 48 hours ahead, so we could scan and get it prepped and ready to go.
I'm willing to try it, but
Well,
I
again-
may have some alternative
Okay.
ways of dealing with it, with just 2 or 3 of the committee members reviewing it and relaying the information on to the rest, but
And that's fine. I mean, again, this is going to be a fluid, very, very fluid thing because we have no idea what's going to happen. So again, we can work with that committee.
okay.
Do we need to amend the motion at all, or we're good? Just, okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Josh.
No, that's fine.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you, Joe, Lisa, Joel, Norm, John.
Mr. President, I have a question for staff. Do you have that meeting of the contractors at the 4 Points coming up on March 25th? delaying that then, or that's been delayed?
I'm in favor of most likely canceling that meeting at this point in time. I am going to talk with, Jenny has been out a little bit, and I'll get with Jenny and Rich, but to hold true with the way everything is going, there is no conferences, everything is pretty much.
Do our property owner comments?
Nancy Ionak, Sandalwood Circle. I'm just interested in how those of us who want to listen in and possibly comment at your committee activities will be notified of the existence and get our little codes.
What we talked about was when we post an agenda on the website, we can easily just post the phone number and the code next to it, or even on the agenda.
Any further property owner comments? Go ahead.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, Gate 2.
What you see here is a mortality rate by age for COVID-19. You probably also have some semblance. You're basically under 0.4% chance. It's 1.3%. 60 and 69, I'm 64, goes up to 3.6%. 70 and 79 years of age goes up to 8%, and then the big shabambas here, if you're over 80, you got basically a 15% chance of dying. All right? All due respect, and I'd love to come in here and make a political commentary, but I am going to resist that temptation about what I believe to be the illegitimacy of this board, given the last recall election. I want to preface this for the official here in the get your supplies, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. That dates back to the 1923 September 1st Kanto earthquake, which killed about 144,000 people. The thing for the firebombing of Europe and for Tokyo, fires ravaged the area, and there was a 15-acre, 1/10 of our golf course area where the chief of police heralded everybody in to come, you'll be safe here, you'll be safe here. And then they had basically a tornado. You know, you can get it in your nasal cavities, you can get it in your throat, you cough it out. If it gets into your lungs, you're probably going to be dead within 2 hours or maybe a day, because it turns your lungs basically into leather. You can't exchange oxygen for carbon dioxide, and folks, it's all over. This thing is coming here. So after this long conference that's been going on, here are the top takeaways at the moment, and this is current. This was posted at 9:01 a.m. this morning to a few select people. At this point, we are past containment. Containment is basically futile. Yeah, please get rid of that, because if you're going to put me on a 3-minute time clock, I will never appear at a meeting again. You got to get rid of this. You got to let people speak. Knowledge is contextual. Some people have more than others. Let it. Yeah. Our containment efforts won't reduce the number who get infected in the United States. Now we're just trying to slow the spread to help healthcare providers deal with the demand peak. In other words, the goal of containment is to flatten the. Probably all heard that on TV. Anthony Fauci, who obviously not, I'm Al Pacino. In other words, the goal of containment is to flatten this curve, to lower the peak of the surge in demand that will hit healthcare providers, and to buy time in hopes that a drug can be developed in time. Trust me, it won't. How many in the community already have the virus? No one knows. We are moving from containment. The United States are currently where Italy was a week ago. Basically, we've become Italy. We see nothing to say that we will be substantially different. 40 to 70% of the United States population, and remember, these are experts that got together in confidence, and by the way, now these meetings are classified. You probably won't hear this again. will be infected over the next 12 to 18 months. After that level, you can start to get herd immunity. But unlike flu, this is entirely novel to humans, so there is no latent immunity in the global population, and there is evidence that people get it once and they get it a second time, so you really don't develop antibodies for this thing. We used their numbers to work out a guesstimate of the 1.5 million Americans may die. The panelists do not disagree with our estimates. This compares with seasonal flu's average of 50,000 Americans per year dying. Assuming 50% of U.S. population, that's 160 million people, are infected with 1% mortality rate, which is low. That's 1.6 million Americans will die over the next 12 to 18 months. This assumes that no drug is found effective and is made available. The death rate varies hugely by age. That's why I showed you that chart. Over age 80, the mortality rate is somewhere between 10 and 15%. I won't go into the specifics. We don't know whether COVID is seasonal, but if it is, in fall as the 1918 flu did. Having studied the 1918 flu, there was a spring 1918 surge, a fall 1918 surge. It came back in the spring of 1919, and then again in the fall of 1919. These things come in pulses. Teleconferencing ain't going to cut it, folks. I don't know whether COVID is seasonal, but if it is, blah, 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 blah. I can only tell you two things definitively. Definitively, it's going to get much worse before it gets better, and we'll be dealing with this for the next year at least. Our lives are going to look different for the next year going forward. What should we do now? And what are you doing for your family? It appears one can be infectious before being symptomatic. You might have heard a little while back that you could be infectious for 2 weeks, 14 days, and not even know it. That figure climbed to 37 days today. People are still spitting out the. They were saying social distancing, which I notice all of you here are closer than 6 feet, and they were saying get 6 feet away from your nearest person. Now they're saying 12 feet might be enough. This thing in the air for 3 hours, not to mention surfaces. It appears to be we don't know how infectious before you're symptomatic, but we do know that the highest level of virus prevalence coincides with symptoms. We currently think folks are infectious 2 days, guess is 4 hours to 20 hours, but now that's up to 3 days on such surfaces as stainless steel, plastics, etc. The virus is very susceptible to common antibacterial cleaning agents, bleach, hydrogen peroxide, alcohol-based, etc. Avoid all concerts, movies, and crowded places. If you can, cancel all business travel. Basic hygiene, in other words, hand washing, and avoid touching your face. Stockpile your critical prescription medications. This is important. A lot of people here are sick or they have psychotropic medications or whatever. 30 days ain't going to cut it. You better see your pharmacist or your doctor now and try to stock up. Might be helpful, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Get a flu shot next fall, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. We would say anyone over 60, stay at home unless it's absolutely critical. The CDC toyed with the idea of saying anyone over 60 should not travel on a commercial airline, but they backed off of that. We at the UCSF are moving our at-risk parents, these are the people, the experts that wrote and considered this thing, back home at the moment from all their nursing homes, etc., to their own homes. Then we are not letting them out of the house. Aerosol transmission, and fecal oral. People were wondering what the hell, this thing seems to be traveling through the sewers, and what the hell, what's going on? Lake Whatcom Water and Sewer might be concerned with this in the future. You might want to check that out. What if someone is sick? If someone gets sick, have them stay home and socially isolate. We're probably late in the thing here, but sooner or later, that we're going to have people here in Sudden Valley, not just Whatcom County. We are going to have to socially isolate people and keep them there and figure out how to feed them and how to take care of them while they're there. This is serious stuff. There is very little you can do at the hospital that you couldn't do at home. And most cases are mild, but if you are old and have lung or cardiovascular problems, read on. If someone gets quite sick who is over the age of 70 or with lung or cardiovascular problems, then take them to the emergency room. There is no acceptable treatment currently for COVID-19. The hospital will give supportive care, in other words, fluids and oxygen, to help you stay alive while your body fights the disease. In other words, to prevent sepsis. And if you know about sepsis, it's a pretty nasty thing. If someone is sick who is compassionate use of remdesivir, a drug that is in clinical trials at San Francisco General Hospital and UCSF and in China. You need to find a doctor there in order to ask to enroll in this. Remdesivir is an antiviral from Gilead Pharmaceuticals that showed effectiveness against MERS in primates and is now being tried against the COVID-19. If the trials as production scales up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What is the fatality rate? Much higher for older adults?
Sir, may I ask you to finalize your comments, please? We do need to get on to our business meeting. Thank you.
Sure. You need to shut Sun Valley down, shut down the golf course. Have you ever noticed how the golf ball looks like the coronavirus? Get real.
Any further property owner comments? Word response. Okay. We'll move into the auditor review. Go ahead, Liz.
Yeah, I'd like to move to take the motion off the table to remove Newman as our auditor for 2019 and bring it to a vote. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? Go ahead.
I think, to take it off?
Yeah, to take it
Yeah.
off.
Okay.
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
So we're just voting to take it off the table right
Yeah.
now?
Take it off the table.
Any opposed?
Well, did, never mind.
No, go ahead.
No, did we get all the information requested? That depends on whether I'm for or against it.
What further information would you like?
Never mind, I'll just vote for discussing that, that's fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
Hearing none, the motion carries.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have presented information about the competence of our auditor, the mistakes that were made in the documents, and other items. And therefore, I think that it's time to come to a vote on approving Newman, finding that he has made mistakes, that we don't need our accounting manager to spend his time to review all of the mathematical errors that were made by Newman. So a yes vote will remove Newman for the 2019 audit. A no vote means that you have confidence in him and that you would like to keep him.
Motion.
Was that a motion?
That wasn't worded as a motion.
Oh, it sounded
No,
like a motion.
the motion was made 2 months ago, and we're just bringing it back on the table
Okay,
now.
gotcha.
And the motion is to remove Newman as the auditor. And so that's what's up for discussion right now.
Okay, it didn't need a second, though.
No,
Yeah.
no. We voted to bring it off the table, so it's back on the table. It was, the motion was made 2 months.
Discussion, right?
Yes.
So if Newman is removed, what happens with the other estimates that you've received? Do you still present those to the board?
That's for the board to decide.
Okay.
I guess I think after looking at some of this stuff, I know that there were a lot of, when he started looking at all of this, And I'd like to ask a question of Joel. If I look at all of the documents that you had him make changes on, ultimately, the bottom line never changed. It was a matter of putting the numbers in the correct place. There was never any gross, at least when I look at the balance sheets and some of your other sheets, there were numbers that needed to be moved around, but in the end, the bottom line remained the same. It wasn't anything that was, like I say, that was grossly in error that he presented.
Well, the bottom line, I think I'm saving this, quite frankly, a matter of mathematics. So basically, if I wanted to, I could take all the revenues conceivably and move them down into the expense category and just put the sign on it. And I could take all the expenses and kick
trial balance, but that calculation, if you just did the math of it, is $260,000. And to me, that is a huge error that you would embed it in the whole idea of an independent audit, is that they would be checking their own work, and to have a very basic calculation.
Can I, oh, okay. When we voted for this last time, I did vote to table it because I honestly look at the information that was sent at noon that afternoon. Frankly, I'm going to vote to remove it. I can't imagine in my business world bringing back a contract or not stepping away from a contract in which the deliverable was negligently incorrect. Regardless of whether or not that one number was right or wrong, the inconsistency in a financial auditor to put those numbers on the in the basic deliverable cover on that was just, it was astounding to me that that was the level of work that they felt comfortable putting forward, and to call themselves an auditor that's supposed to be checking over something else, even take the time to check over their own work that was supposed to summarize everything that they did. For that reason alone, regardless of any other information, I wouldn't feel comfortable from a business standpoint of re-upping a contract if that's the quality of work that we can expect out of somebody on their first showing. I strongly believe you're generally going to get your best the first time that they show up, because they're not supposed to be comfortable yet. And if that's the best they have to deliver, I don't think it's good enough for Sudden Valley.
I guess against Paula's argument, and I'm going to read from the contract that we signed that says, it says the client responsibilities. It says you agree to assume all management responsibilities for the tax services and any other non-attest services we provide. Oversee the service by designating an individual, preferably from senior management, with suitable skill, knowledge, or experience. Evaluate the adequacy and results of the services and accept responsibility for them. I just guess I'm curious that I know Joel dug into it when he got here, but how much our staff, our treasurer, I assume our county manager, worked with him. It's hard understanding our books. You know, I can look at things and go, wait a minute, I don't get this. And sometimes I'm right and sometimes did he sit down and have a long conversation with Jennifer as to what things represented? Because it seemed like even when Joel sent him corrections and things, I think there was communication there of what he didn't understand. Because you can be a CPA and you can look at things, but you may have to ask questions of someone, that's all I'm saying. Because I just, you know.
Linda, I can say he was on property one good full day with Jennifer strictly.
Thank you.
I was also going to add that I believe the first time he came on site was January of 2019, and he concluded his audit. I think he gave us the finance report sometime in August, so that was a good 7-8 month time frame in which to ask any questions that he had. And I do agree that there should be that communication going on. Auditors and staff work together, but it is inherent in the role of an auditor that they would be able to understand those and then be able to present a deliverable, having had their questions answered and being correct and having done the review, which is different than having those questions during the audit process. This was the final product, and that's why it's an issue.
I guess, so one of the things the auditor told us in his report was that our books are overly complicated, essentially. And when I looked through what Joel provided us, it seemed to me that mostly the revenue section. In that same document down next to the expenses that I don't really guess, I'm not really sure what the check mark signifies other than maybe it's the right number. And then by the third correspondence you sent us, there was, you then edited your own edits. And so, like, part of me is wondering if, like, some of this stuff, you know, he thought he had those things in the right groupings based on what he was given as information, but then it turned out that maybe he was incorrect. And then it seemed like even you gave him numbers that you ended up changing after the fact.
See how this whole conversation began, with the income statement there, was over the tax return. So meaning when I was reviewing the tax return, at that point, I wasn't necessarily going to get into all these changes need to be made on the income statement, but with the tax return, there's a certain there's like a page that needs to reconcile with the audited income statement. So then at that point, now I had to tell him these lines need to be changed. And then when I sent that to him, so then, if you looked at the text of the email, then there's a quick follow-up with, okay, now I'm going to really look at these groupings in detail since someone else is already now going to look at the income statement. And that's where you're seeing further like changes with count groupings. So it all happened in a fairly short period of time. Probably you'll notice within like one day, then the next day, and the day after.
Yeah.
So.
Steffi is next,
sorry.
and then Karen.
Sorry, Steffi.
Oh, no, it's okay, my question got answered.
Could you use the microphone, please?
My question got answered, thank you.
Karen, you go. Along those lines of the changes that were made, there were a few things that in there that I think should have raised red flags to him, letting him know that possibly these groupings were not correct. For instance, if you look on, again, the original, very much lacking.
Go ahead.
AJ, did you get everything you needed? Did you get all of your items requested?
I mean, mostly. I guess the one big thing was like, you know, there's clearly some, you know, displeasure with what he's done by some people here, and I'm wondering if any of that was ever communicated to him and what their response to his inefficiencies or deficiencies were.
On whose level, board level or my level?
Well, I don't know if that would come from the treasurer at the time or staff.
It would have come from the treasurer, so I cannot answer on that, on whether she did or did not. I can't answer that.
The lack of notification doesn't change the lack of qualification that I'm seeing with this auditor. And because he wasn't notified in writing, is no reason to me to hire him again for the 2019 audit.
I just want to add to that, that I think the conversation that he and our county manager had about having to basically restate, significant restatements to the income statement was communication enough. And again, any auditor, any good auditor should know that that was a significant deficiency in their final product.
So Leslie, what's being asked of the board at this time?
We have a motion on the table to withdraw from Newman as our 2019 auditor.
And was there a second?
There was before, and we don't need to second again because we brought it off the table.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make kind of one other point was some of the other, I don't know, some of the stuff is just kind of random to me. Like, we've been told that they didn't provide a management memo, but it appears to me at the 8/21 Finance Committee meeting 2019, in that agenda packet, there is a draft of the audit report and a draft bullet point, talking point of the management letter. And then in the emails that were provided to us, Carol on 8/25 requested the audit report and the memo, and the next day Newman supplied those things. And in the 8/29 board packet, the agenda includes an audit report, the supplemental info, the internal control memo, and a management memo. And then 9/13, Linda made a request for info that triggered Joel looking into some things. Joel started requesting edits on 10/28, and then it was the end of January before we picked this up. I don't know, there's just like a significant amount of time, it feels like, between when he presented to the finance committee to when any sort of like, anyone was being notified that we were unhappy with the services that he provided. Just kind of weird things.
Does any of it improve the quality of the audit? That's really the question here.
I think at the end of the day, the audit that is on our website is accurate. Is it not, Joel?
It's accurate, because I've made it accurate, yes.
And I'll just add to that, which means it wasn't independent. And that is what we contract for, an independent financial statement audit. Over-reliance on our staff to make it correct negates the independent portion of the audit.
Can we call the question?
I would just say that, like what Linda said in our client responsibilities, is the scope of the work, I mean, clearly says that we'll have staff overseeing it. It's not just,
It's at a different part in the process.
so.
From anyone's knowledge, have we ever had issues like this with auditors in the past?
I'm not recalling any.
My first, I'd ask Linda. I'm going to defer to her on this one.
We've had very few auditors here. When I worked for the association, there was a little one-man show and that.
Jay Vandal.
That's correct.
That name I love.
And for years, he did
The audits.
our audits. Audit.
Okay.
I believe I have a paper copy of that, but only 1 year.
Yeah.
And since then, it has been Larson and Gross for just innumerable years. And like I say,
Yeah.
they could come in here blindfolded, and I know that's a terrible thing to say, but it's the way I feel about them. And I know a lot of times they gave us really good audits, but there was 1 year, and when I was treasurer, we went back to them with some irregularities in payroll files, and the squeaky clean went away. Because like he says in his audit letter, you're given a limited number of files to look at, depending upon what you're given to look at. Go back and read the 2011 memo and letter to the board. That's all I got to say. So I can say, yeah, in the past, they never caught it until we asked them for it, but it was something they never looked at.
On the other hand, they didn't make mathematical errors like this, and
No, that's
they did present management letters, and they did make presentations to the board, because this was expected of an auditor.
You just asked about other auditors,
Yep.
and I'm saying that
Yeah,
I've seen irregular.
Sorry, I have one more comment, and this is just general. I have a little bit of experience with auditing firms. I've never been an auditor, but there is that amount of reliance. The auditor does rely on the company to provide them with this information. And then they take it and they review it and they build their opinion on that and put together their final thing. And that is the point where we're seeing in the contract that, yes, they do rely on us to provide certain things, but at a certain point, they take it and form their own opinion and are able to, and this is very important, able to understand our processes, take that information and interpret it correctly so that they can form that independent audit. So it's not that they come in with no discussion with us and no reliance on us. They do, but at a point they need to be able to separate themselves and form that independent opinion and be able to present the financial statements accurately. Okay, now I'm done.
Discussion's always good. Any further discussion? So we'll call the question. All those in favor? And the motion? Yeah, the motion.
In favor means to vote to remove Newman. A vote in favor is to remove Newman.
Yes. Okay, everyone clear on the motion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 2. Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, since we have voted to remove Newman, I would now like to move to ask our attorney to write a letter to Newman. This is per his email to us, to specifically identify the areas of concern with the work and to ask for a final account of services performed.
Then include anything that is outstanding that we have not paid yet, we would then pay at that.
Yes, we are paid in full through the end of the 2018 audit, and to the best of my knowledge, they have not done any work for us yet on 2019, so there ought not to be any billings for that.
2018 taxes are paid, right? That's all taken care of in their payments, right?
Oh, yeah, that's included in it, yeah.
Any further discussion? Can we restate the motion?
To have a letter written to Newman as recommended by the attorney.
Yes.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you.
Okay. Now, what is the board's pleasure on going forward to select a new auditor?
I would assume the finance committee and the treasurer. I don't know if Joel has in his records, what did we put out for an RFP and RFQ when we went looking before? I don't know if that was retained or...
The last time we went out was when Jennifer was here, and she did solicit auditors, Larson Gross, if we want to go that way, or do we want to go out and try to get some more estimates? That will probably take another month, and then we'll be into April, and who knows what the business scene is like right now.
This is maybe more of not being able to get much response in that they would already have their calendar booked for the year.
Yeah, like, definitely I would say that we're getting into kind of a time range where we're really cutting it close. Because we would want to make a decision soon. So, like, when this first came to discussion, I reached out to the exact same people who we did the RFP for the 2018 audit, which was the firm in California, Lars and Bros. They both responded back and both indicated that they're more than willing to do the audit. So we do have two right now. But if you wanted me to go out for some other quotes, then I'd have to, contact some other firms, and it takes some time to get those quotes back, and I'd have to give it to you guys, and you would deliberate on it, so I could push it out a couple months, and then I could put it as a possible danger for a rotation for the 2019 year audit.
I would suggest that we at least get another quote. I mean, considering Newman's quote would be kind of null and void. There could be a special little auditor out there that might be perfect for us to take that chance. I don't know. But that's what I would do. I think it's good to have an actual legit set of quotes versus just one that's probably favored and then, one that obviously is.
Okay. I'm just curious if maybe we could possibly put a date on that. I don't know how much of a niche market we are on, and I don't want to currently extend this. So I'm not sure what realistic is, but we say we put out the call for a certain time frame, and whatever we get back in that time frame, and then we just call it, rather than extending this into that danger zone like Joel talked about, where we might not be able to get something on the, get on an auditor's calendar.
The end of March would be 2.5 weeks. Do we want more than that?
Can you get a response in 2.5 weeks?
Can I ask, quick question. If we were to put out, we already have an RFQ template that we would be able to fairly quickly reuse, correct?
Yeah, the quickest thing for me would be to just contact some of the firms and just send them our income our last audit financial statements and 2019 numbers and invite them to give us a quote for an audit.
Okay.
That would be the
Quickest and.
quickest method.
If, I'm looking at the time frame, is the first meeting of, where are we? We're in the second.
That would be April the 9th is the first meeting in April.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Would that give us enough time if we awarded right after that to engage somebody and to get done what we need to get done, or would we need to do it closer to the next 2 weeks, or would we have that 4 weeks?
So you mean you're saying like to award it on to someone on April 9th?
Yeah.
That should be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then what we're looking at is asking for bids to be submitted. If the board meeting is the 9th, then they would have to be in by the 6th of April in order for us to get the information onto the board packet. Is that a good date?
I would encourage us to maybe look at the end of the month to just give it a little bit more time to look at. I mean, yeah.
So to clarify,
I would
to
say the end of March.
have bids in by the end of March, and we would vote on it on the April 9th.
That would give you guys 8-9 days to review.
Okay.
Don't think we
Okay.
can vote on that. I think that's just.
I think
Oh,
Stephanie had
that's
something to say.
March 31st, what is that, a Monday?
Okay, never mind. No, March 31st is a Tuesday.
Do we need to have an actual motion for this?
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's make it a motion.
Okay, I will make a motion, to put out a request for bids, what do you call this?
Probably request for quote.
Request
We're
for
not gonna
quote,
call it RFP,
okay.
right? Just request for quote.
Yeah, to audit firms to respond by March 31st, so that the board can vote on it on the April 9th board meeting.
Second.
Further discussion? Do you want to repeat the motion?
well, I was still finishing writing it out, but yeah. A motion to put out an RFQ for a new auditor for response by March 30th, to be able to vote by April 9th.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Anything else, Leslie, on that front?
I know we're good.
Okay, great. We will move, thank you, everyone. The next is new business, board director resignation. So a letter was sent to the board regarding to inform everyone that Director Pierce has decided to no longer continue on the board. And so we need a motion to accept her resignation.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. So that will trigger an
I'd like to have a little bit of a long discussion, too long. So I'm prepared, and I have a statement here. Lisa and I are going to work on it to finalize it. If we start the 30-day period tomorrow, that means that it would begin on March 13th, Friday the 13th, right? That's the week. It would close, I'd suggest closing it on April 20th. At the end of the day, due to the fact that the office is closed at the end of the 30 days, which is on a Saturday, April 18th. So what I'd like to do is close it on the 20th so that people are here, that somebody's here in the office, they have to be date stamped. It's not sticking it through the little after hours sort of thing. So what I would like to propose, and it depends on what you guys want to do and the coronavirus and state of affairs, April 23rd is a scheduled board meeting, business meeting. And I suggest we could use the same process we used before, where we started the meeting early, and depending upon whether we have 10 applicants or 2 applicants, you either started at 6 or at 6:30, seat that person, continue on with your business. Otherwise, you would need to probably select a special meeting to appoint that director. But you've seen what it's like to work through the process. So that's what I would suggest, because then that bit of information, if you approve of that, could go into the information that's going to be posted on the website, and everyone will know when the interviews and stuff will take place. And I would assume, and I guess that's something else I want to ask of the board, that at the close of the application period, the candidate names be posted on the website, because that was such an issue before. And I just would like to get that all cleared up in one fell swoop here. So I would make a motion that we open the 30-day period beginning March 13th and closing it April 20th, end of day, and that on April 23rd, we interview the board candidate and a new board member is appointed.
Second.
further discussion. Hearing none, the motion is to begin the 30-day period, March 13th, closing April 20th, with the April 23rd scheduled business meeting to interview and ultimately appoint. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Andrew, can you get a little closer to the microphone because there's somebody in the audience who's saying that he can't hear? Thank you.
I'm sorry. Is that better? Is that? That was funny. We did that. Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Are we good? Okay. Next is July 4th fireworks. Approval. Go ahead, Joe.
This is something, I guess it's been done forever here. We bring the July 4th fireworks to you guys to say yay or nay, basically. If the board wants to have them, we'll have them. If the board doesn't want to have them, we won't have them down at the marina. But the history behind that is to try to contain the best that we can, all of the fireworks in one area as opposed to scattered throughout the community. So that's the premise behind this. So it's up to you guys.
Do we want to make a motion
Generally, that's the way you go, you make more.
I would move that we approve the July 4th fireworks for 2020.
Second.
Discussion.
What's our budget?
$1,500, but that's across all events.
Who was next, AJ? Did you see?
I guess my thoughts are, not to be a giant party pooper, but bunch of fireworks being lit off in our watershed goes against our, well, it goes against our mission statement, I believe, or vision statement, because we talk about being good stewards of our watershed. Although I do get the reality of confining it to all one area instead of people going at their whims, doing what they do at their own houses out in the middle of the forest. Seems to be kind of a conundrum. Is there a better location besides directly on our shoreline?
I'm going to defer to Norm on the better location, but I'm going to, having been out here a little over a year now and dealing with the county and the lake, I find it very odd that they allow us to shoot fireworks on the shoreline. That's just me, with everything that, you work at the county, you know how everything is, and I find it very odd that they allow us to do that, but that's me. But as far as another location, I'll defer to Norm on that one. The marina is a good place, it's easy access, we've got water, God forbid something ever happened. I wouldn't ask Norm where he would think a better place would be, because it would eventually fall on his shoulders to help police.
So looking at your question, AJ, on that one, that actually, we've got it's really two events, not just one. There's obviously the discharge of pyrotechnics, and there's also what's become the community picnic. So that has to be taken into account as well as far as location. The other one is parking with that, because it was not unusual last year to have 400 to 500 attenders down there, plus vehicles and guests. So looking at a location that's not on the watershed, we're pretty limited in that. Most of our other property would be encased by forest canopy in one location or another. So the dog park in that area is actually, aside from the golf course itself, is about our largest green space we have available. So before there would be a commitment made to say move the location, we'd probably have to take a big look at where that could be, present some proposals on that, and see if it would be logistically possible, especially for the amount of people that have become to start to attend here. So I don't have an answer for you, really. We'd have to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I was not coming up with something in my head of a better place, but.
Yeah, it was brought up several years
Figured
ago.
I'd ask.
Yeah. It was brought up several years ago when we started to try to clean the event up, as Linda might attest to. It used to get pretty raucous down there. And as we started to rein it in and look at other locations and the watershed came up, it was very difficult to come up with a location other than the marina. But it's not saying it's not worth doing again. I just don't have anything off the top of my head.
Do you know if Bellingham is going to outlaw fireworks? Because I know sometimes that encourages lots of folks to come and visit us.
They're actually on year number 3. They have prohibited them about 3 years ago with it. Difficulty first year with it enforcement-wise, but it's got progressively better for them as far as compliance. But they also offer a professional show, so at Boulevard Park. So the trade-off is the community event still can view that. In fact, if you've seen the drone footage from basically Seattle to the border, that's you get to see what they're doing there. But they offer a professional show, as we used to have years ago and no longer have. So that's the trade-off with it. Other areas in the county are considering banning it just because of the wildland fire issues. And so the county has struggled with this on the county council level for a while and probably continue to struggle with it.
Two questions. One, can you tell us what the cost was last year? I know you said the full budget, was that for events total or the 12.5?
That was for events total. We do have a cost breakdown. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but we do have the 4th of July completely broken down, including cost of security and labor and.
As well as the barbecue during the
All that
day
stuff.
and, okay.
Yeah.
And then the next one is, I would assume, but I could be wrong, that the fire chief has some sort of opinion. And also, has the Lake Whatcom Water Council or Lake Whatcom Water ever come in and had a determination as to whether or not it does contaminate or what their feelings are about us having it here?
So 2 questions. No fire chief likes this. They don't like fireworks discharged at all. Dave Ralston said this: I would rather that it was outright, curtailed through the county, but the county has slow to that mindset. Said rather than have, as AJ just stated, have it discharged in the forest canopy at the gates. Over the years, South Whatcom Fire has accepted this as a trade-off with it, understanding it's a mitigation to a whole other risk, which is at this point, a wildland fire scenario. So that's kind of what's going on with that. As for Lake Whatcom Water and Sewer, they're not the regulatory agency for that. That's the Department of Ecology. And DEQ has been unhappy with fireworks discharge along the shoreline everywhere, but they haven't come out and written a specific regulation against it either, for a lot of reasons. A lot of municipalities, and frankly, if they were to come in and impose a prohibition on this lake, they have a big one down in Seattle called Lake Washington they'd have to do something with. A little hesitant to do that, especially one of the tenants there has a lot more money than they do. So there you go.
Fine. Is there any actual data to back up that, like, hey, if we have this event here, these wild people are still, won't have projectiles going up into the trees? Or is this just like what we're thinking about? Because it's almost like the whole idea, the community's being held for ransom because we don't want people to, light up the treetops and stuff. But at the same time, we care about our water, and, I don't want to ruin anyone's groove, but my thought would be to really focus on that day event and maybe allow some sparklers or something like that. No projectiles, and just really amp that up. And then, maybe everyone gets their beverages down and they're ready for the evening. I mean, I think if someone's going to light something at their house, they're going to do it. But I mean, there's opportunities for education at that event and, during the day and stuff like that.
Well, first, understand only what's classified as Washington State legal fireworks are allowed at the event. That's not saying that somebody's not going to sneak an M80 in and blow their leg up like last year. But that's the typical, what we put out and the views and goes out in e-blast. These are the only type of pyrotechnics allowed per the state patrol. Essentially, anything with a fin and a stick is not allowed. They're not supposed to have bottle rockets. You can have mortars, but you can't have bottle rockets. So that, we follow what Washington State Patrol puts out with that. As far as data, as far from the gates, no, because this event has been going on since I had hair, maybe, which is long ago. Yeah.
Seriously, we've never, otherwise, the other opportunity is hiring a whole lot of staff from security to go around and patrol the area. I don't know about you, but, well, they did clear the lots below me, so my chances are improving that I wouldn't get a fire at my house. I know that down in gates 3 and 9, that there's lots of years that we get complaints of different people that go in there, and it's still a real heavily wooded area. And I don't think we've ever had a fire over the 4th of July ever in our residential area.
Can I make a comment? To kind of what you were saying, Josh, about feeling like we're being held hostage because we have to have this event or people are just going to be misbehaving. It's not just us. You notice the burn ban never comes on until the day after the 4th of July. It's because they know full well they can put the burn ban on and people are not going to comply, and that's the whole county. And there's the same story, and Norm can speak a lot more to it, but the same story in Birch Bay. They hold a community event on the water because it's safer for their community.
And they can, and they do. So again, the long-term answer to address water quality is you have to do what the city of Bellingham has done, but understand that comes with some things you have to then mitigate through an enforcement program and education. And it takes a while for people to took them a while for people to not, continue what they were doing with that. The event, as you said, the burgers and bands and all that stuff, that has become a lot more what families and think will attend, a lot of positive comments with it, and we should continue to promote that, and we will. But until the decision, I think, kind of rests with the county council as to wildland fire issues, then it's very difficult to make that case here without having other trickle-down effects, as Linda alluded to, can be quite detrimental to the community. So you're right, there is a certain amount of we're being held hostage, but there is also a trade-off of the risk versus gain side of things. And that's ultimately where we're trying to drive down our risk.
I don't mean to keep belaboring the point here. For me, it just comes down to safety and safety of our members and their kids. And so you have folks out there, my understanding is, any Joe can go out there and light off their fireworks. So I guess to limit that and be more safe for our community, I'd like to see us move to a professional operator if we're going to continue with the fireworks event piece of the program. And I know that's cost, so I know that we probably wouldn't be able to, anyway. Those are my thoughts, and for me, it just comes down again to the safety of our membership.
I would agree with you. Years ago, Linda can attest this, we actually had a professional operator. They actually lived in Sutton Valley. They've retired since then, that did a community show here on the lake. And I think Leslie you've seen a few of those, I imagine. But we're a little behind, much like the discussion with the auditor. You have to book a lot of that out a year in advance. We did look into that a couple years ago, and most of these outfits are out of Seattle, Tacoma. They do things like, Mariners games, the Bells games, stuff like that. So ultimately, if that's a direction that the board would like to see us explore, we could certainly pick that back up, but unlikely that would be the case this year. We'd have to phase that in 2021, but it's not out of the realm of possibility either. It just costs.
Yeah, every year we bring in extra security and we bring them down to the waterfront for the fireworks, and we have a large slate of volunteers, and I wonder what would happen if we took all of that manpower and pushed it out into the neighborhoods instead. Now, by the time somebody hears fireworks in their neighborhood and they call security or whatever, they're not going to get there in time. But you're going to have a lot of eyes on there and make sure that wherever the fireworks went off, it hasn't started a fire. And that's what we're really concerned about. As far as fireworks down by the marina, the city, the county, and the water district do pay to do testing of the lake water. But they're not focused on chemicals that would come from fireworks. They're looking for phosphorus, fecal coliform, this kind of a thing. So I don't know if there is any real data that shows what pollution there would be in the lake from the fireworks. The best option would be if the county council would the county, and then we would be all on board. But meanwhile, we deal with this same issue every single year.
That is correct.
I guess for me, I'm going to vote for it, largely because I think I'm uncomfortable voting not to do it without a better plan than we have this year to ensure that we don't have a fire, that we have an operator, that we have something else. I think while I would love to see that security go up or volunteers go up, and I think we have a much better chance of containing and mitigating and managing our risk if everybody's in one centralized location rather than trying to run over 44 miles of houses in the forest canopy. So I would encourage that, and that's how I'm going to vote today.
How much of our staff does go up into the gates during, or security during the event?
So clarification, we shifted a couple of years ago to most of the support functions for the event for pyrotechnics, the safety aspect. It's actually our maintenance department. So they are actually out, not only doing setup for the picnic, they're actually out there being involved as the safety leads in the launch area. They also are trained to utilize the 2 water trucks that we put out there, as well as the other fire extinguishers and other mitigation factors. The security presence is confined to supporting for the inspection as you go through the gate, and then we maintain 2 roving patrols out in the association's property responding to those. There's been a discharge of fireworks, this address on Polo Park, et cetera, as they go and try to intercept or interdict that activity. The county also puts out their staff, mostly at Sheriff's Office, mostly at Birch Bay, and you also have the fire marshals that are roaming around all of these areas as well, which we keep in contact with that office. But the security presence is, over the years, has changed, not so much to be on the field, but available to do the other support functions that they on there, such as patrolling, assisting with inspections. We've also been fortunate to have the county deputy out the last 3 years. So if there's any issues with public law, they're there to deal with them and to talk to anybody that's got questions or has issues with behavior. So we'll make that request again, and we've also changes over the years that have occurred. South Whatcom Fire no longer supports this event actively because of their call volume. Happen to have Cascade Ambulance be the medical support, so there's that aspect as well, which is one aspect is when they're there and they're not subject to being called out. So that keeps that basic first aid and advanced life-saving available if needed. So I had a long-winded answer, but security is involved, but their roles changed over the years.
Of course, this is all conditional based on the situation in July, whether we will be having gatherings or not.
True, and hope if we end up with a level 2 burn ban as well. But as it hasn't been shown to be in place except at 12:01 on the 5th. So, yeah, if it's in place, we'll enforce it.
Do what we can do.
Any further discussion? Okay, the motion is to,
Approve July 4 fireworks for 2020.
all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed?
Abstain?
So we had two. I voted three opposed. I voted yes. Two for.
Abstain?
Abstain.
Leslie's abstaining.
Mhm. So we're-
Yep. So motion does not carry. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the emergency request for the Marina dock replacement. Go ahead.
Let's start with a motion on this. As some background to it, staff came to me as the treasurer last week stating that they would like this to go through quickly before the marina season opens. And we would not be having a finance committee meeting for at least another week, so it would be the end of March before it would come to the board. So we're bringing this directly to the board for consideration, and the motion is to approve the bid from Lakeside Marine in the amount of $41,420 plus a 20% contingency in the event that Whatcom County required removal of concrete pad and/or permitting costs that exceed the estimated account for a total amount of $49,704. Is there a second?
Oh, second.
Discussion.
Okay, let's have Maddie give us the information.
Thank you.
Sure, so, can you hear me? Okay, that's good. Great. I'm Maddie Otley, I'm the recreation manager, and the marina now falls within recreation, so that's why I'm here today presenting this. On February 1st, the recreation department was informed by security that the launch ramp dock at the marina had collapsed and was partially submerged in water. So just to be clear what this infrastructure actually is, it's the dock that's next to the concrete ramp down at the marina. So it's the dock that people use in order to embark and disembark from the ramp there. So people put their boat in the water, and then they'll walk out onto the dock and then get into the boat. So that's what we're talking about, just the dock part, not the ramp or the arm or anything like that. The floating dock is what we're talking about tonight. So just some background, the existing dock is a wooden residential grade product that was placed in service in 1998, so it's been there for about 22 years now. And I do need to point out that I accidentally gave you guys the wrong handout. Attachment B, I provided you an updated one, a paper one right there. I accidentally gave you a draft copy of the 2019 reserve study, so I gave you the actual approved one. The only difference is what the recommended replacement date is. So in the draft one, it said 2019, and in the final one, it said 2024. So that was the difference there, but in reality, the dock is now submerged in water, and the only thing holding it up are the piers there. So that's why we're here tonight. Boating season starts April 1st, and we are required to get permits for this, and the permits can take a significant amount of time because we need a shoreline substantial development exemption permit. Slips and getting a lot of feedback from our members. They did a repair last year on the floats underneath, so that's what actually keeps the wooden structure up, is the floats that are underneath the wooden storm this fall, and I think that really had a poor effect on the structure. So we are, asking for this to be replaced. The structure's also wooden, and we're finding that it's bowed too. So because of the bowing of the structure and the degradation of the launch floats, the 22 years of life it's already served us, and the permitting requirements, we think it's best to just replace it with an actual marine grade commercial structure that's going to last us a long time. I think it's good to be reminded that we are a public commercial facility. We have a lot of slips down there. We have about 165 dry slips and 88 wet slips, and the majority of those are held by our members. And for the first time last year, we actually filled up all of our dry slips, and we have a long waiting list for our wet slips. About 20, 24 people right now are waiting for a wet slip. So there definitely is a demand there. I included some financial information too. Last year, let's see, we brought in, really is a facility here that generates quite a bit of income, and we're worried that if we don't, make this essential upgrade, that it could affect that income that we receive. We have a few people here tonight who can answer more technical questions about the dock or anything. Andrea Herrig is here. She's our assistant marina manager. We have Bob Wolven. He's our volunteer dock master. And then we also have Dan Given. He's from Lakeside Marine. So he's the one we're actually recommending to go with. And he's brought some products here if you guys are interested in seeing what the dock would actually be made out of. But I'm happy to answer any questions you have as well.
We're in discussion now, so go ahead.
Okay, that works. So I'm looking here at the timeline where you're talking about permitting in 6 to 9 months. So if it takes that long, what's the plan? If you don't have a ramp for that long, permitting takes you, we're already in March, 6 months is into the beginning of the season already. Do you have an alternate plan for how people are going to use the ramp? Are you going to shut down? I'm assuming you're not going to shut down the marina, but what's the plan staff-wise to deal with that if the permitting does take that long?
Yeah, so we've been talking with Dan actually this morning. We're hoping to get some expedited permitting through the county. I think we do probably qualify for it since this is an emergency, request that our infrastructure, an essential part of our infrastructure down there has failed. So we're hoping it'll be much shorter than that. That is really the absolute maximum amount of time that it could take. Speaking with Bob and Rob, Rob had to skip out of here, but you can launch from there still. It makes it more difficult. You have to be in the boat when you're launching too, so it's a two-person kind of thing. So you have to have one person backing the boat up and the other person has to be in the boat and then actually engage it and then come out. And then I think what we would have to do is allow people to access the wet slip docks and then out onto the wet slip docks and then get onto the boat. And that I am concerned about the traffic that's going to be generated from that. It's very busy down there. So it's not ideal, but that's what we've talked about so far. But maybe Dan has some alternative ideas or something.
I guess the other question I have is, I know with dirt you can't, because you're in the watershed, you can't dig before the 1st of June. Do you have those same constraints with taking away and changing the water, working in the water down there? Or
I think that's a Dan question. I'm not quite sure.
We can start outrighting as of June 15th. So we're really just trying to fast track a permit using an emergency moratorium. And that law does exist in county code, but we will do feasibility and see how fast that can actually get a reality of how long that will take.
Okay, I was just curious. The last thing I have, or one of the last things I have, is on the bid, I believe that states somewhere in here that the sales tax is 8.7. I thought we were 8.5 up here.
It's just a generic bid. It was somewhat rapid how we want to do it to make.
Okay, it just figures it.
Yeah, but we would certainly update all that because we're unsure on a couple of things to do what the county is actually going to let us do and the validity of the current dock. And so I just have to prove those two things, and then we can update whatever's needed.
Were you finished, Linda?
I'm done.
Don't take this the wrong way, Dan, but is it typical to have vendors here during a process where we're bidding, on things?
I have before from my previous city administration where we're recommending something to you. We wanted him here as a resource to you because he's an industry professional. That's why you can have all of your questions answered. I'm not a marine industry
Okay.
professional. But it's really, we make a recommendation to you, but you don't have to follow our recommendation because you're the board of directors. It's ultimately just your decision. But he's a resource, and that's why we wanted to provide it to you.
Okay, so, we have two other bids here. They're significantly lower, than Lakeside, and I understand one of those bids didn't have the, permitting in there, which is odd. But, you know, another one says the job's too small, but on their website it says no job too big or small, so that's kind of weird. And then the other estimate was for something that doesn't work. So I feel like we're presented with just one estimate here.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm 100% for fixing this thing. This sepia photo that you gave us is like, it's like, you know, I remember the stock. It's so sad looking now. And, you know, it definitely needs to be replaced, but I feel like we don't have the necessary amount of quotes, legitimate quotes, to make a real determination as far as the cost goes.
Yeah, just to speak to that, there's only, as far as I'm aware, 2 contractors who actually work on Lake Wacom, because it is an extremely regulated body of water. So that's Lakeside, and then Sawicki, who's the other contractor that we gave you a quote for. And we had almost no one respond to us when we were putting requests out there. And we just wanted to get this to you as soon as possible because we think it's going to have a very big negative impact if we don't make a decision. So I agree with you with what you're saying. We really wish we could have provided more bids to you, but we're finding hesitancy from people to come work out here.
How many non-responsive bids did you have?
I think we had about 3.
3. So 3 in addition to this that just didn't respond?
That's correct.
I'm just curious what the process we use for putting out an RFQ is.
With an RFP, it's written up, we send it out to all the contractors that we put in our scope of work, whatever is needed, whether it's permits and all that, whether the whole scope of work will be put out, and then it goes out to the contractors and they respond back to that.
I've got 2 questions. The other 2 bids are much lower by like 20,000. And I'm curious if both of these other bids, because it doesn't really, yeah, it sort of does, but it's like the costs are so much lower, and I wondered if you were sure that they included their labor costs to you in their bid.
Yeah.
Question. Second question is, did we submit this work to our insurance company as for wind damage? And don't we have insurance for down at the marina?
I would not, I could send it in, but I would say it's probably not wind damage. It would be pretty hard for them to, the age and condition of that. I mean, that would be a tough fight. Plus, I don't think, I mean, our deductible is, I'd have to look, I want to say it's 10, maybe 15,000, right off the top of my head, I don't know that, but.
Well, I know, but if we do this whole project, it looks like around $53,000, that's without taking in the 8,000 if they have to take out the concrete.
I can try to turn it into the insurance company.
It's just a question.
What all were the companies we solicited bids from?
We talked to Mantle Industries, they're in Blaine. They create docks and ramps as well for marinas. I'd need to look up the other 2.
Bids, I feel like they'll know if our price range is appropriate or not.
Again, Maddie, did you say that there are only 2 contractors that?
Going for a commercial dock, so we're going to be beefing everything out. So we're going to have
something that the Fish and Wildlife will come in and ask us to remove. It's my job to say, hey, we don't have that in the budget, but I have to put that on there just in case. And so I don't want to shoot myself in the foot. If people are coming in lower, I feel like I'm always coming in quite fair for what we build. And, you know, I'd like to provide anybody, we have a property next door to Sun Valley where we have our dock products, and we can set up a meeting out there and you guys can come and look and walk on the docks and really get a feeling of what they are, and that's kind of why I have all that stuff. So I do feel like there's a lot of traffic over at that boat ramp, and it is a little deep towards the outskirts. That'll need to have some new pylons put in, and that's going to need the proper equipment to do that. I can't attest to anybody else who has that type of equipment and how that operates. I just kind of know how we do it. But I can certainly say that we are fair on our pricing of what we're proposing. So, but I would recommend, and I could help you guys find a few more vendors to get bids from to help out.
Why not?
As a boater and resident here in Sudden Valley, my name is Bob Bueno, and I've been using that dock situation for 5 years now. Rob and I have been dock master for, this is I believe, our third summer, is that right? We have been trying, and we've been pushing and shoving and doing everything we can to replace a very dangerous situation of the dock ramp. It's been so unstable, I don't want to use the word miracle because that's probably not a correct thing nowadays, but it's a miracle nobody's gotten hurt. Fortunately, last year we had some support where people could walk out on that dock, and thank you for that over there, Joe. I took the dollar amount that was given to us for the dock, and I divided the numbers of years of which that dock has been floating out there. And I came up with $1,400 a year is what that dock has cost you guys. As far as going to the insurance company, they'd laugh your head off because that dock is so old and beat up that I doubt seriously that the insurance company would step in and do anything to fix that dock. As a boater and as a resident and as being involved in a piece of property that the valley owns, for the amount of usage that's been taken out of that ramp and what it's going to cost to replace it, in my opinion, is well worth every bit of it. I understand the 3 bids, but we have a time frame here on this thing. We're taking in the income now, we're paying our mortgage. But if I wanted to place my boat in the water next month, May, which I generally do, I couldn't do it. It wouldn't be possible. So I do know that contractors today are very busy, and this is a small job compared to what a lot of them have. I'm very familiar with the marina in Everett. I've spent 20 years there in the marina, working there and doing my job as a yacht broker. But I've been involved in it, and I know what it takes. Because the marina is producing of income, I would encourage the board to move as quickly as possible to come up with a bid that is acceptable to everybody, obviously. As a property owner, I appreciate that. I guess I would just, at this point, I think we're going to have to come up with a solution, Joe, that is going to be a temporary again. I don't see it happening. I don't see going through the county and doing those items in order to get that dock up and running for May. That's when most of May Day is the boating season. That's when it starts. And that's 6 weeks away, I think, somewhere in there. So thank you for your patience and listening. If you guys do this twice a month, is that what the board does, twice a month? That's nuts. I'd rather have a tooth canal than to sit here and do what you guys have to do. So thank you for your patience and your time, and Rob and I'll do whatever it takes to help get this thing done and put into a position where it'll be positive for those boaters that use the lake and contribute to the $99,824.36. So thank you. Yes, you have a question?
No, I actually wanted to add some context to this in general. Thank you, Bob. I ran some numbers. I can't guarantee that these are 100% accurate, but I did my best. Over the last 5 years, the marina has brought in a little over $302,000 in profit. I am taking into account capital in that, particularly the loan payments for 2018 and 2019 relative to the marina work that was done. So theoretically, the marina is paid for by the marina users. And so as we think about this issue, we need to think about it in those terms, because the people that are paying more, they have a 10% increase this year. And so as we go through and think about this, it isn't just how should we spend dues money in this case. We have contracts with each of these marina users to provide of service. This is an amenity that more than pays for itself, even including the capital to date. And if you go back further than that, that amount of profit is going to be even more because we have just let it go for so long. And so I just want to put that in context there. I do have a couple of questions. I don't know who's the best to answer this, but if we were to put it out for even more,
I've been working on this for weeks, constantly having to call back, email. Contractors are getting into their really busy season right now. A few of them didn't even want to give a bid.
and I just want to add to that, that's telling. We just went through this whole process with the auditor, and the fact that we have someone here that is responsive, that is committed, makes a huge difference in what we can expect going forward, typically. Oh, there you go. And my next question is regarding the time. Am I jumping on anybody? Does anyone else have a question? The time frame. So are we looking like we're already past, we're not to be able to have the dock in place for the beginning of boat season? Could we have it in place during the summer at some point if we move very quickly on this?
As soon as we could start, we could build the dock in time, but any kind of in-water work, meaning to replace the pipes, that would have to be June 15th. But I think being proactive, we're probably 6 to 8 weeks out and just getting to the dock, period, because the product's here and all the parts. So we're kind of coming in here short, but it's all doable. We just have to, I think, number one is to start on permitting immediately and just see where we can go to fast track that. And maybe at the next meeting, we can update that. So we could jump right into feasibility and all that. And I'd be willing to do all that pro bono. And we can come up, I can call some of the colleagues, but I know we're all a little busy. It's a really small pitch. So, we've got other stuff to do this summer, but we can make it a priority if you guys want to do it.
Rich, I think I saw your hand first.
I have a question, and then I have a comment. Can I assume that the same scope of work went to all the bidders?
That's correct. The same scope of work went out, but that doesn't mean that they actually gave us what we asked for.
I understand that.
Yeah.
That's my comment is
Yeah.
that the two bids that are lower did not even address the complete scope of work that this $41,000 bidder did. And so those bids would basically be similar to a no bid. And I know that in the companies that I worked for over the years in construction, if you get a no bid, you get a no bid. And if you put out 5 bids and you only get one and the rest are no bids, you take the one that you got. And that's the way bidding systems work. So that's my point of view on this particular issue.
I think it was AJ and then
Paula was before
and
me.
Linda.
All right, I just had, so the timeframes on the permitting, 6 to 9 months, and then it says construction time varies. 3 months is average time once materials are ordered. So the water window begins June 15th. Does it end the same time as the dirt moratorium window, or does it end?
15th to October 15th, and then it'll open up again December 15th. Out just because we're more concentrated on in-water work, and it's more on fish and wildlife regulation than it is county.
Yeah. So it says construction time average 3 months. Is that like actual, like your working days out there, or how much that can overlap with the permitting timeframes?
Well, we wouldn't want to order any materials until we know we would be permittable to do that. So we have that, so we would have to try and get an emergency moratorium to be able to get our shoreline exemption. Fish and wildlife are usually about a week or so to get the HB approved, but they won't allow us to do that until we have shoreline approval from Whatcom County. So it's, you gotta get the one to get the other. But once we have shoreline approval, then we know what specifically they'll let us do. And I just kind of bid on what's there and in that footprint, which tends to be the easier way to permit it. But timeline is really depending on where we go. I could say, hey, we're going this, but I have no idea if the health concerns come into play with this as well. So I would just say in normal circumstances, it's going to take me a minimum of 3 months, to not only just get the products, but to get the approvals. So this could take 6 months because of what we're doing. But if I could go in and get a verbal agreement from one of the 2 folks in charge of shorelines, then maybe we can come back and say, I'm pretty sure we're going to do this, and it's in the same footprint. But figuring out the validity, and I think, didn't you go up to the county and talk to them? So I think we've already kind of started the conversation. So it would just be, I would just kind of go confirm all that and say, we need a dock for summer, and that's, and people are going to use the ramp, it's going to be dangerous without it. We need to remove the existing structure so no one's walking on it, but we don't want to remove that until we get some kind of knowledge from the county that that's what we can do, and it would be grandfathered in.
So just to clarify then, the permitting and construction times will happen one after the other. We can't run any of those times concurrently.
It's entirely possible, but we would at least need that verbal agreement and then, financial commitment to ordering the materials. So, we can move as fast as you guys want us to move on that, but it's hard for me to order all that stuff without knowing what they're gonna say. And so, we could make that stuff, we have a shop in Fairhaven, and we could put together the ramp and the pier within 2 weeks. With getting materials, having fabricators put that together, and the float would probably take a little longer to just gather all the materials, get them here, but we could probably build it in under 2 days. And then pile driving could follow, we would have everything there June 15th would be the idea. I would get the verbal from them, but then we have to apply for the emergency moratorium. So we want something signed by the county to say that it's okay to proceed. And then it would be, then there would be then it would come in the financial responsibility of everything.
So the likelihood of us getting a dock in June 15th seems nil.
I can put a number on it. We have other emergency moratoriums that we're going to have. We've never actually even had to use that part. And this will be the first time we've actually had
Okay, so I had a couple of questions and a comment as well. One, well, actually, first I want to say, just on the idea of people being on this really concerns me, saying that, people can kind of maneuver around it. I would highly suggest that we block that off and not do that. The risk to be yeah, we do need to, but I mean, before we do that, I think somebody was talking about, how we could maneuver around it. I would say I would be really uncomfortable with that from a risk standpoint for the corporation.
Yeah, just to address that, right now it's taped off with safety caution tape, but we can definitely work with maintenance to get something up there
Yeah.
ASAP to block it off.
That's pretty concerning to me. Number two, how confident, so when I look at the numbers that are on here, I don't even actually know if it's that much more realistically because they were the other quotes that came in were so non-compliant. So how confident are you in your numbers with that 20% contingency that we're not going to have we're not going to find something else? How confident are you in that you really built that number into something that's going to be worst case, not, I really hope we can make it?
My bid is fully inclusive, so we don't go over. So I would write something in the contract to say that this is our budget, and we don't go over that budget. But there's really nothing to be, I've looked at everything there. It's for what we do, this is not a complicated project, so.
Including that pro bono feasibility?
That's just me trying to help out and try to figure out if we can actually do this.
Yeah, no, I get that, okay. Yeah, so kind of my comment just goes to that. I mean, I know when I looked at this, I was like, whoa, those are way out, but the other ones that we have don't even come close to answering the bid. And similar to what you've experienced, when I've put out RFQs and requests, realistically, we solicited 6. Only 5 were even viable. 1 couldn't even do the work that's required, and 4 are completely non-responsive. I'm really concerned that if we don't go with this, that we've already exhausted 6 solutions. And don't really, because they were so non-responsive, have a good idea if the other 2 are really out of the ballpark. So I wish that we had more that were responsive and answered the actual questions that were asked as well, but I don't know what else we could do to get a different answer on that to take care of the issue that we have. A flat-out safety issue, not even just taking care of the marina contracts, but that's just I don't see another option to fix it from a safety standpoint.
If that dock remains there, I know people will have a desire to use that dock, launching their boat, especially after they paid their $1,000 or whatever we're paying this year, that's immaterial, that's a small amount.
I have a 16-year-old son that would love to get himself out there.
And I do this a lot, and I do brave it out there, and bring your muck boots, is what I would say, and good balance.
Some sort of temporary situation, much as we say that.
Well, we could figure
We're paying the money now.
Yeah, and I want to bring up that topic to you guys, and is that I am going to ask the county to see if indeed we could, if there's anything, I'm going to look for suggestions. I'm going to have some ideas, but I'm going to let them kind of come to me on what we think we could do with just the boating season around the corner. And I'm confident that we could probably get the product built and ready for June 15th. I just don't know about trying to do anything with, there's so much liability in that, even with my company touching it at this point. The one thing I think I would recommend is that once we have some type of approval, is immediately removing it and towing away, or just pulling right out of the program. It's probably what we do and all of that.
It's definitely action.
Yeah, so. And hopefully we can, hopefully at the next meeting I can have a little more answers for you guys, but definitely, I think right now, just figuring it out.
2 quick questions. When you get a permit from the county for something like this, they don't come out like they do with plumbing and electric and look at it and sign off, or do they have to sign off on it?
Well, probably initially the shoreline or the people issuing the shoreline permit may come out for a visit. They don't always, but they, we'll provide them with pictures and
handles if we're on the lake side, but this is on our spit side. Does DNR get involved at all since it's in our marina? I thought then I haven't heard anybody speak about that, because I thought that anything they have to say ends at the lake side of it, not our marina side of it.
Your permits will just require that I get a permit from Whatcom County and Department of Fish and Wildlife. And then the Department of Ecology is probably more on the water side. They'll kind of oversee that. And there's a comment period kind of the reason we will go sit around is that it's going to sit on somebody's desk at ecology for a while. I have all the confidence in the county being responsive, especially with the emergency state. But, those guys don't answer their phones at ecology, so it's not like I can call them like I do the county. So, and certainly there will be a comp period, but that's where I kind of have to figure out what the emergency moratorium applies to and whether we have to go through that process. But as far as I know, the DNR will not be involved in your process.
Okay. Last question is for Maddie. I hope you plan on taking advantage of the $500 a year maintenance program on this. We talked about how our current dock looks really bad, and I think sometimes when we're offered programs like this, just for the life of our new things that we have, we do real well to make sure that they can come out and take advantage of that, rather than it's just, hey, it's brand new, let's leave it alone for 10 years.
Absolutely, and just so you know, we do that with the fitness equipment that you guys approve too. They come out quarterly to service it. It really extends the life, so absolutely.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak in support of this motion. This dock is part of the reserve study, and in the reserve study, there is a very low value on it. Based on some 22 years ago, we have no idea who built it, and it obviously was not built to the standards that we need for, multiple people to use it. Based on Karen's numbers, the revenue that we get from the marina well exceeds what this is going to cost. And I think that we need to continue to support this amenity, which is making money. We need to just keep, keeping it up, protecting it.
Yeah, and just to highlight, with that 10% increase you guys approved last year for the slips, it should generate about 10 to 12,000 extra income for 2020.
Any further discussion?
You were waiting a long time.
Do you have an estimated duration for the work in the water?
For the actual construction, and once we start water work?
In the water?
Yeah, probably about 2 to 3 days.
2 to 3 days to remove and reinstall?
Yes. And we just live next door, so just bring the barge over, airplane car, it would all be prefabricated, built in Fairhaven, and then brought down by, on the back of the truck, launched right there at the boat ramp. I mean, for me, that's an easy project.
So, hypothetically, you could do all of the outer water work anytime.
That's correct.
And then once you have the permit in hand, you can go into the water. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Just as a point of interest, have you ever been turned down for a permit?
No, not that I know of, no.
You
We
could
tend to
split
do
this.
mostly just stuff like this and then a lot of residential, so that's where the feasibility comes in. So people always want, some a lot of people, but sometimes people want larger docks, but we're already know that they're gonna say no to that. So the Shoreline Act kind of dictates that whatever square footage you have, that's what you get. Or if you would like to apply for more complicated, expensive permits to get, so if your dock needs to go further out in the water, it's just gonna take more time and money to permit that, so.
Okay, that being said, do you know what you're gonna permit for?
We're gonna just, the fast track on this would be to permit what's existing right
Okay.
now.
All
And
right.
that's what you guys have, I believe, and do they have all the drawings and stuff that we submitted?
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's for the exact same size.
Yeah, it's the same footprint, but we've altered that with kind of
Okay. That being said, with a not to exceed bid, this could be split into two sections to allow them to start out of water work anytime they want it. And then once they have the permit in hand, do the in-water work and complete it. So all of that fabrication and everything that has to be done outside the water could all be done. And it could just be split into line items within the contract. And the kickoff for the in-water work would be at the receipt of the permit.
I have a question on that. If it's over 40,000 and we're bid splitting, does that present a audit risk to the association?
I don't think so. You would have two scopes of work. You could do all your outer work first and then all your inner work. It would be two separate. We'd have to get a quote. We'd have to get a quote from him for both. We'd have to break it apart. But no, it would be two separate scopes. But he's going to have permitting in there as well, so there's going to have to be that paperwork as well. So it would actually be three phases.
Yeah, but that's out of water work.
What exactly is to do any on-the-ground work, whether in the water or not, you're gonna need that building permit, are you not?
You're going to need the building permit, yeah.
So the only out-of-water work there is fabbing the dock in your shop
Yeah. Well, all
before
outside
permits.
Yeah. So the process would be is once we have the permits, we would just install the dock, and that was like what I was assuming was a 2 to 3 ratio based on summer weather, no wind, stuff like that. But it's a protected area, and I feel like you guys have the necessary means there to make my job easy. So, yeah, it would come down to that, but if once again, I think if we could just get some type of approval that the validity of the current dock is doable, I think that would be pretty safe to say that we could build the same dock here.
I have a question. Do we mind if we take a short 5-minute recess to allow our board member to return to be part of the discussion?
Yes, second.
All those in
Do a
favor?
second.
Acclamation? Okay. All right. Recess for 5 minutes. We'll let's call the meeting back to order here. Thank you. At 9:31, carry on with the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
And the first year doesn't start until it's installed, right?
So there's a motion on the table now, just to recap, to approve the capital, or the SURF request for the marina dock replacement. There's a first, there's a second, and we're in discussion at this time. And
Okay, you want the motion?
no, I'm just making sure everyone's aware that where we are with
Yeah, the
where we
motion's on
left
the
off
floor.
before the recess. Yep. Any
So-
further discussion?
Yeah, I believe we need to make an amendment. The number that the 49,704 in the original motion did not include tax. So we need to make an amendment to include the we're calculating 8.5% tax, so it would be $53,929.
Second? Vote on the amendment.
So there's a first and a second. Any further discussion?
All the question?
Okay, let's repeat the motion.
The motion was by Karen to include the tax.
But the original, are you talking about the original, now that it's amended?
Now it's
Yeah,
amended.
so I was taking your.
On the
written-
second.
Yeah.
Right.
Perfect. All those or any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
So this is the amendment.
Aye, this is to the amendment,
Aye.
yes.
Okay, any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Any further discussion on the original motion? Go ahead.
I get your points about the no bids. I think we just need to be, and like it would seem like no business in Lake Whatcom would actually be open. But we really got to make sure that people are looking for us to save money in ways. And if there's a way that we can do that by making some more phone calls or whatever we have to do to decrease those no bids. And I understand this is a special occasion. Not many people do work on Lake Whatcom. But I just want to put that out there because it seems like a reoccurring problem. And I just think we should all be conscious of that and make sure that we're doing our due diligence to get these numbers in.
Can I just comment on that? I agree with that completely, that we should always strive to have the 3 bids. But if we are having to basically bother someone to even get their bid, the chances of us wanting to go with that contractor for work, to me, are slim. Because if they're not responsive, how responsive will they be during the project? And so I do think that that's something to consider as well. Yes, we may be able to get more bids, but will they be of the caliber of contractor that we would want to work with? And I think that's also something to consider.
Any further discussion? Steffi?
I think that it would be important that we're treating our vendors with respect and open communication so that we're changing any negative connotation with doing work out here. You know, we don't want them to feel, just more open communication instead of like, go ahead.
No, you're fine. You have a broke leg. I understand that, and I get it, but there's like a whole psychology to that, and I mean, I have to deal with that kind of stuff too in my workplace. But you know, there's always that one chance that you're gonna find and make a good relationship with a vendor that might not have been as present as they should have been in our own minds. But it's just, you know, something to think about. And I think part of, you know, people want to see us all work together, and I think part of that is us working together to get out of the status quo of some of these issues. And, you know, I don't know what that is, but, you know, as long as it's in there, then, you know, maybe we can get some good numbers.
Any further discussion?
I'm just concerned that if we keep pushing this out, we're going to miss the window completely for the start, or at least even the June 15th window. I am reluctant to push it out any farther, even to the next board meeting. The other thing that I will say is, in the water district, we also have a policy of getting 3 bids wherever possible. Sometimes it's not possible, and sometimes the bids that come back are not responsive. They do not have all of the things that you need, and there's nobody else out there that wants to bid. And this problem of pestering somebody just to get a piece of paper will not get us the responsiveness and the low bid that we really want.
Paula?
Just a comment. I agree with you totally. I think that and I think it's a good thing to bring up, that we want to ensure that we're always getting those bids. I think in this case, and I think you somewhat alluded to this, it's not necessarily this case. Overall, we really just need to make sure that we're doing that. And I think that I would hope that we can all at the table agree with that. In this case, I do want to say it sounds like you went and solicited 6 different vendors, only 5 are viable, 4 completely non-responsive, which leaves 1 responsive bid. And I've never worked anywhere that really went above and beyond that with six solicitations, and you kind of kick out the non-responsive or under-responsive. So I would move to support this. I don't even know how much different they actually are, because nobody else gave us the information that we asked for. So just looking at this, again, the safety issue of that dock is probably number 1 to me, with second being that is a revenue generating area, and we need to replace a residential dock to begin with something of the grade to support the people that we have in there, and the business and the boats that we have going through there. It's not a residential structure, so I would support it.
Just for clarification, I'm not saying to push this out or anything. I just want to make sure that we're all aware about the bidding process, and, you know, ultimately we're working for the community. So wherever we can make changes or try something different, that would be awesome. If you can't do anything else, I understand, but there's got to be some alternatives.
Further comments?
No, but I'm just going to clarify my further comment that I completely agree that the expectation should be 3 bids, and then every once in a while there's extenuating circumstances. And with Paula, I think this is one of them, but yes, that is the expectation, that we are attempting to get 3 bids.
Call the question.
Thanks, AJ.
Drum roll.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, everyone. It's a lively discussion. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
You should stay, because then you could get free t-shirts.
One year of maintenance, Dan.
Yeah. Again, thank you.
I thought you said 2.
I heard 2.
Yeah.
I thought he said 2 years and a t-shirt for all of us.
And thank you to Maddie and your team for everything. Thank you. Okay, now we're on to property owner comments.
Property.
Nancy Alunak, Sandalwood Circle, you all know me by now. That exemption from the shoreline management program substantial development permit requirement that he was talking about is only available for structures prior to 1976. For the footprint that existed in 1976. Does anyone know what that dock, or if there was a dock there, and how big it was there in 1976? Because if this has to go to a full shoreline permit, you're not getting it this year. I hate to pop people's bubble, but it's worth knowing.
Yeah, the permitting does take a while, you're absolutely right. And I believe the permitting falls on the contractor to fulfill.
Yes, but I have talked to AJ, I will make some phone calls.
Mary McIntosh, 3 Whistling Swan Place. First of all, I'd like to thank Joshua and Steffi for speaking up for the lack of bids. It's exhausting. It's not a once in a lifetime thing. It's not a special event. It's every single time. And I really do appreciate that being brought to the attention, and Joshua's repeating it, because I don't believe that the people who need to hear it are hearing it. The next thing I have to do is I have a question about the vehicle with the Sudden Valley emblem that's out in the parking lot right now. Is that Joe's vehicle? Do you have a vehicle with a Sudden Valley emblem on it?
No, why?
I don't know what kind of car it is.
Is it a car or a truck?
Yeah, it's a boxy car. Who are you?
That's a Sudden Valley vehicle.
And who's driving it? That's what I'm asking about. And who are you?
Oh, he hit somebody.
Okay, so we provide vehicles to staff?
It's a vehicle that any staff member can use. It's
24 hours a day?
No, it's just during working hours, when John is working.
Okay, all right. That's all I was wondering. Thank you.
All right, since we drugged this out this long, last meeting, Ms. Nancy Alinac stood up and talked about the permit.
I haven't got anything back from Tyler yet.
Okay, thank you for updating us. That was it.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. 9:44.
Yes, you may.